the prosecution wasn't able to give you a solid enough picture?
I think some people might be surprised to hear you call her a good mother. Given
like, I'm still confused. I have no idea what happened to that child.
Was there any justice for Kaylee here?
I mean, amen, brother. He's asking the questions that we all wanted to ask back then. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the damn sofa. That's the damn sofa back there. My name's Paul, and Mr. Roscoe is still in his kitty bed up front. I tried to entice him over here. He ain't budging, though. I swear he is okay, though. He just doesn't want to be a TV dog, as I call him before we start filming. I hope everybody's doing well. Y'all, today... So, this is like a follow-up, I guess you could say, to the Casey Anthony video I did about the documentary. In between things, I have now been like going on another, I must torture myself with this. I've been going down another Casey Anthony, like revisiting the rabbit hole, I guess you could say. I don't know if I mentally blocked these interviews out or if I didn't see them. Regardless, it was like new to me though, okay? So that's why I was like, I have to come and share this and talk about it to make it through. What I'm talking about are the interviews that a couple of the jurors gave after the verdict. And so these were like back then, right? This isn't like recent or anything like that. Especially juror number 3. She really liked giving the interviews. And then there's an alternate juror, this guy who he speaks up to. So I want to focus mostly on these two things because I think what happened with this case in this documentary is a lot of people, they didn't know about the case, right? And so it was like, well, how do we arrive here or whatever? There's also a couple of things that I think is interesting that the juror says that I feel like, maybe this is where Casey got her story from. Because I do feel like what Casey did is she's combed over videos about herself. That's what personalities like her do anyways. And she has used these to help piece together the story that we saw in this documentary, right? So what we're going to do is kind of like what we do with these type of things. I'm going to put the video up here and then make commentary on it. These full-length interviews are out there on the internet if you want to watch the whole thing without my big mouth running. Now, before we start, thank you everybody who makes the Sofa Squad possible. I appreciate all the patrons, the channel members, everyone who talks in the comment section, shares and likes the videos, and just watches them. Y'all, it helps so much. I would not be here without each and every one of you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of the sofa cushions. Now let's go ahead and get edition.
Joining me now for an exclusive interview is one of the jurors who helped determine Casey's fate. That is Jennifer Ford. She joins us from Florida this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jennifer, I read that you said you were sick to your stomach after reaching the verdict. Is that because you knew that Casey would go free even though she may have murdered her child?
I think it was more just not knowing whether you're setting someone free that murdered their child or if, I mean, we didn't know, so it was hard to know if we made the right decision based on what actually happened.
I mean, y'all, when I watched all of the interviews that she gives and the stuff that comes out of her mouth, I'm like, what? So I wanted to show this clip just to kind of introduce. This is who we're dealing with. This is kind of like her narrative right here. Now, one thing that becomes prevalent, and I don't know if they say it in these interviews, but like, you remember they were sequestered. And what was this trial? Like 30 some days or whatever. So keep that in mind. So they were sequestered and they acted like they had, and they had no idea how big this had blown up when they were in their little bubble. Now, again, to me, I guess I feel like, well, that doesn't really matter because it is what it is. So when she's like, oh, we're sick to our stomachs because we didn't know or anything like this, it just kind of baffles me. There's some things that she will say that I'm like, maybe not even apply to this specific case, but I'm like, well, no, this makes sense. This is the law, right? I get it. But as we dive deeper into the interviews that she gives, there's just so many contradicting statements. You gotta see it to believe it. Let's keep rolling the tape.
Without having enough evidence to say definitively she committed a crime or she didn't.
And you're not convinced that she didn't?
I'm not convinced that she didn't, but I also couldn't exclude the possibility of it being an accident, so I can't find her guilty of a crime if I'm not sure a crime was committed.
Now, one thing you're going to see with this is that literally, according to her, they needed an actual videotape moment by moment to make any kind of decision on this, right? The first jury in the history, I think, to ever need this much evidence to convict somebody. Y'all, there's people sitting on death row right now for far less evidence than was required of this.
So it was just that not knowing exactly what happened and not knowing if we made the right choice. And of course, we don't want to set someone free if they killed their beautiful daughter. You know?
Spoiler alert, Jennifer. You kind of did. Okay. Now, here's the other thing too with this, right? Now, of course, this is going on in the moment, and it's like, okay, we have these certain charges. So, and I'll give more of my opinion towards the end of it, because I think that the how do you say it, the miscarriage of justice here, or whatever, the fact that she walked free, right, and that no one else, wink, wink, has ever been charged with the crimes against Kaylee, I think is a combination between attorneys, charges, and this jury. So, there you go. Let's keep watching.
Not knowing and having that doubt, I wonder, does that make you frustrated with the prosecution? What did you need to hear or see from them that you didn't see?
I'm not sure what I needed exactly. They had strong circumstantial evidence. They just needed something solid to just say it was absolutely was not an accident. Just kind of tie it all together and not leave the dots for us to kind of, or me to kind of connect with speculation and accusations and guessing. Like we're instructed not to do that. So for us to connect the dots with, question marks.
Now, this is all nice and dandy, and 100%, like, I get what she's saying, and you could apply this to many other cases. However, there was so much. I think one thing that I saw a lot of is circumstantial evidence, and a lot of people saying, I don't think that the jury really understood circumstantial evidence or the power of it. Now, I ain't no attorney, if you follow me, right? And that's the part that just gets me with this, is I'm like, what more did you need? And again, as we get into this more and she talks about, the other charges that they were trying to consider, because we'll hear what she says about the first degree charge and all that kind of stuff, because I somewhat agree with what she's talking about, that if it was on my shoulders kind of a thing, and not specifically with Casey, but in general, right? But I also feel like when we get to that part, I think it's coming up here in a couple of minutes, that I think they stepped outside of what they should have been worried about, is what I'm getting at. So let's continue.
Even though you had a lot of question marks, the chloroform, the smell in the trunk, the body being found wrapped in duct tape months later, that wasn't enough.
Well, I have a lot of arguments against the chloroform I think there's so much doubt with that I have to take that out of the equation. It doesn't exist for me.
Crystal Holloway, the woman alleged to be George Anthony's mistress, she said that George told her that this was an accident that spiraled out of control. And listening to you, it sounds like that's what you believe.
Like I said, I don't believe one way or another. I don't have enough evidence either way.
How much impact did that testimony have on you?
Not much. Like most of the stuff, it can't be proven, so it's speculation. And
now, one thing that I do think is interesting with her is she is very big on the speculation stuff, but then you'll hear her speculate about other people in the thing here in a little bit. And again, just as you listen to what she's saying, I'm just like, what more do you need? It's just frustrating to me to listen to this, because the more she talks, the more I'm like, I feel like the jury, or at least her voice, is like, I went in there looking for reasons not to find her guilty, right? Not the other way around. And of course, it shouldn't be that way. You should just be taking the evidence. But I just feel like with what we saw going on, yes, Baez did a very good job at throwing a bunch of stuff against that wall, right? I mean, that's what he did. He went in there and he muddied the water. I get that. But you just, for me, I'm like, I can't get past certain things. The duct tape. Now, also, we know at this point with the internet searches that there were some things left out. The foolproof suffocation thing, that kind of thing never saw the light of day. And so that's very frustrating. We also know that there was the chloroform searches. Well, then Cindy came back. Oh, well, I did this and blah, 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 blah. I can see where the water got muddied on some areas. Again, circumstantially, I just come back to she didn't report the child missing. She disappears with the child the day of, right? They see she doesn't come back home. She's gone for weeks. They just arrested some parents, I don't have that in front of me, for not reporting their 11-year-old missing, right, for 3 weeks. I mean, I was like, this is Casey Anthony stuff, and they're arrested, as it should be. You know, like, this is not right. And so, but to the level that she sits here, and it's just like, I don't know either way. Like, I don't know. There's no evidence to say what happened either way. I'm just like, you know, come on. Like, there is a little bit of leeway here for, you know, we've presented all this pieces of the puzzle. They're on the thing and they add up to this picture. You just got to put the last couple of pieces in. And it's like this jury wasn't even willing to do that. I mean, and that's just what kind of blows my mind.
It doesn't mean much. You can't put too much weight on it. It's just a guess.
So you sat through all that testimony, 33 days of testimony. You must have formed some opinion of what you think happened.
Well, as I explained before, it's easier to get to the conclusion that it was an accident than it is to get to the conclusion that it had something to do with chloroform and duct tape for me. Because if it was chloroform, George said Casey left the house with Kaylee, so were they in a public place when it happened? The whole chloroform thing, was Kaylee in her back seat chloroformed and duct taped, or did she in public put her in the trunk? I mean, I don't know how to make that whole picture come together.
Now, here's the part that's frustrating about this whole, well, was she in the public? Was she this? Take chloroform out of it. However, she did this to Kaylee. Were they in public when they did this? Have you never seen? I mean, she could have gone down a dirt road and done this. I mean, it's like, that's where I'm just like, you know, I mean, what are you talking about? You know, I mean, it's like, again, looking for excuses to shoot down any possibility. There's numerous ways it's going to happen, even without the chloroform. You know, like in regards to if she did something along those lines, I mean, she acts like there's no places to kind of hide out away from the house and do this, right? This is just what blows my mind to hear. This is the thought process that went on after sitting through 33 days of testimony.
Do you think if the prosecutors were not seeking the death penalty, it might have affected how you deliberated about this case?
Absolutely. I think it was even mentioned a few times. If they charged her with other things, we probably could have convicted or, you know, got a guilty sentence, but not for death, not for first degree. There's not enough to substantiate that. That's a very serious charge.
Okay, so here's my thing. And y'all let me know in the comments. First of all, if they had charged with other things, well, they did, you know, and I have questions about that too, because we'll hear her make a comment about that in a few minutes where we'll talk about it when we get there. But I'm like, you know, come on. And then the whole thing of, well, not for first degree because that's a very serious charge and blah, 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 blah. And she'll talk about this and we'll talk about it more as well. If I was on a jury, and again, I guess this is where I'm confused. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so help me out here. But I feel like you're supposed to worry about guilt. And I think I have a clip of someone talking about this later because I saw it somewhere where they're saying like they're supposed to worry about guilt, not the punishment. And so her getting out here and saying that weighed on their mind, I'm just like, I don't think that's how that was supposed to go. Regardless, I mean, if you know what the punishment's going to be, I mean, we're human, right? If I knew that was there, I can't say that it would not weigh heavy in my mind, but, you know, there was other charges they could have hit her with that I'm like, this would have been appropriate, even if you felt like it was an accident. So that's what blows my mind about it.
I was shocked yesterday when Russell Eucler, the alternate juror, told Elizabeth that he thought, based on the evidence, that Casey was a good mom. Is that what you thought the evidence showed?
Nobody got up there and said, you know, Casey acted like Kaylee was a burden to her and she never wanted to be a mother. I mean, nobody said that. They all said that Casey seemed to have a good relationship with her daughter and it seemed to be genuine. So we had that on one hand, and on the other hand, we did have the behavior that was questionable at best after, you know, Kaylee died and she was out and, you know, doing whatever she did.
Now, again, we saw countless people, even in the documentary, get up and say the same thing, where they're like, she loved this little girl. She was very good to this little girl. She was very attentive. And again, if you watch my other video, I'll say it here. You can, someone can be two things at one time, right? They can be all those things and then be sick and tired and jealous of their child because of reasons A, B, and C and take that child's life. Heaven only knows the poor things that like Casey Anthony whispered in her daughter's ear when they were alone in a moment of frustration, I can only fathom, because I can guarantee you they were not good. You know, like any parent who might be frustrated, trust me, Casey has another side to her, and 100% I am sure Kaylee saw that other side when no other eyes were around.
The jurors unanimously are refusing to speak about their verdict, but alternate juror Russell Euchler joins us from St. Petersburg, Florida. Mr. Euchler, good morning. You say you agree with this verdict and that you too would have voted to acquit. Why?
Well, there was a number of reasons. First of all, there was so much reasonable doubt. The prosecution, did not present the evidence that showed that, that Kaylee had been murdered. They didn't show a motive of why, from their own witnesses, this really good mother, had killed her child.
Okay, couple of things. So first of all, again, he's repeating the same type thing of, the prosecution didn't show this or whatever. To me, the motive was quite clear, right? I mean, this was quite, for numerous reasons, right? I mean, this was very clear. And I think it was, to me, I think it was a blend. I think it was a blend of Casey wanted freedom from a child, but there was also, and I keep using the word jealousy, and I think I don't know if that's the proper word, but it was almost like a get back at her parents via Kaylee, if that makes sense. That kind of a thing. I just think that was present there. Does that mean that anyone who is a young mother would go and do this, whatever? Absolutely not, right? 99% of people would not. They could also still have those feelings of, oh, I wish I could be a teenager or a whatever, a 20-something-year-old. I mean, that's normal, right? I mean, anyone would feel that way. But to take it to this level that Casey did, this is completely abnormal, right? So one thing that I want to also say is, did you hear what he said towards the end? And I actually play the clip again, and y'all help me out here. And again, this is just sofa speculation. When he got ready to say nice, I was like, do we think, and we don't know because it wasn't there, but it was, I felt like he was going to say this nice woman, this nice looking woman, something with that, because I honestly, seriously question how much of her looks played into this verdict.
From their own witnesses, this really good mother, had killed her child.
So, that just seems weird, but he'll say something again towards the end of his interview, and I've replayed or whatever, another slip up that we'll listen to, but let's keep going.
And then finally, they did not show, how Kaylee had died.
Not guilty does not necessarily mean innocent. So does this mean you don't think Casey Anthony had anything to do with the death of her daughter?
I think there was a horrific accident that happened, and that was covered up. I think the family knows more than what they've said. There was a comment at the end of the trial that said, things snowballed and got out of hand. And again, I think that's true.
So interesting that we keep hearing this. It was an accident. It was this. They covered it up. The family knows. Again, all this stuff that kind of came from the defense's, side of it or whatever. And we'll hear more from the other juror, Jennifer, about what she thinks about George and whatnot here in a couple of minutes. But again, I just think that this is interesting that this weighed so heavy with them, because as we know at this point, I mean, poor little Kaylee's body was, all but in the backyard, okay? Let's just call it what it is. It was right down the damn road. Decomposing in the woods, bless her little heart, with duct tape in a bag. Come on. This is my thing. Even if you said this was an accident that snowballed out of control and so they took the child and this is what they did. Is there not some kind of like negligent, type situation going on here with that they could arrive at, which one of the other charges, the lesser ones, which was a manslaughter thing, like aggravated manslaughter or something like that. Which I'm just like, we'll hear what she says, but I'm like, could we not have gone with that? I mean, this wasn't going to carry the implications of, the death penalty on it. So, I mean, how did we just arrive at, we're just throwing out anything that looks, like it could be whatever. And we're just going with, we don't know. So, but we'll hear them talk about the deliberations, and that's another reason why I think we arrived here. We'll hear it. I'm sorry I'm jumping around, y'all, but literally, this has me fired up, okay? This has me fired up. I probably should have just done a rant video because I'm talking about it before I can even show the clips. It's got me so pissed off. I mean, y'all, I have taken this personal, okay? But this is what it's like. If you didn't watch this, like if you weren't maybe born yet, or if you didn't see it back then, you're just being introduced to it. I mean, y'all, this is what it was like watching this play out in real time. I mean, it was this impactful. People were this emotional about Kaylee, as they should be, because nobody else seemed to be.
However, the little girl died. Casey Anthony then went on to spend 31 days shopping and drinking and partying. Did that bother any of you on the jury?
Well, of course. The behavior was bizarre. But what I took from that the family was very dysfunctional. And you got to remember, Casey just didn't start lying for the 31 days. She had been lying for the previous 2 years. So it was just kind of the norm for her.
I think some people might be surprised to hear you call her a good mother, given the fact that she did all that lying for 31 days. And even before, as you pointed out, her own lawyer called her a liar and a, quote, slut. How do you get to the good mother part?
I love it when people like news anchors, like really serious people, say tawdry things like her own lawyer called her a tart. I said tart because I didn't want to say slut. You know what I'm saying? But they sound so like doctor-like about it or whatever. And again, I'm just like, Casey's got this magnetic power or something, right? Like she's got these people snowed. Like, yes, she was a very good mother, very good mother. That's what the evidence showed. And it's like they excuse away everything for her. Well, they had this dysfunction. She was already used to lying, so I mean, that was the norm. And this is where I'm like, it is not normal for your child to go missing and you don't say anything about it for 31 days. I don't care what kind of BS next level stuff you're pulling and lying and whatever already, we have to draw the line somewhere, okay? That should have spoke volumes to these people, okay? But it didn't.
Well, that was from the evidence that the prosecution brought out. The first number of witnesses were Casey's friends. And every time that they said that they saw, Casey with Kaylee, it was a loving relationship, and no one provided any evidence to the contrary.
And again, I'll say it one more time. 100%. I'm sure Casey was a sweet person to Kaylee, especially in front of others, right? You can be two things at one time. I have no doubt of that, and I have no doubt that she was probably a complete monster to this child behind closed doors when no one was looking.
Many, as you know and have heard, are outraged by this verdict. We just heard in Yunji's piece that many people are saying that the jury should be given, quote, an exit competency test. What do you say to those who don't agree with your verdict and think you got it wrong?
I'm sorry people feel that way. I'm shocked, since I've been home last night and, watching just the news accounts of what I've missed. It's actually shocking that they're coming out so against the jury.
Well, Mr. Uckler, finally, the jury in this case has basically set Casey Anthony free, either very soon or within a year and a half. What do you think she's going to do with the rest of her life? What would you say to her?
That's a tough question. I think Miss Anthony definitely has some issues that she needs to address, professionally.
I mean, to say the least, my God, right? I'm just like, I'm shocked that everyone's upset with us. I mean, this is the disconnect we're talking about, right? I'm just like, really? I mean, they really had y'all sequestered, like, deep somewhere in a cave, right?
Something horrific happened to Kaylee. a sweet little girl that that died, and so hopefully she'll be able to move on with that.
Okay, this was the other thing I was talking about. We're going to replay it. Notice that, now granted, he has like a little bit of a stutter kind of a thing, and I think it gets worse the more nervous he gets. When he said, again, that died, and I hope she's able to go on with that. We'll watch it one more time.
That died, and so hopefully she'll be able to move on with that.
He's very particular about his words that he's using. They have to know, right? I mean, they have to know. And again, this is years ago at this point. I'm just like looking back on this through lenses of, again, this is what the story came out with after it all went down, right? So there's that. Let's keep watching.
Telling me, though, that the original vote for the aggravated manslaughter was 6-6.
Correct.
And which side of the 6 were you on?
The manslaughter.
So originally you thought that
Right.
she was guilty of manslaughter, or could be guilty.
Could be, and I wanted to investigate it further to see if it fit based on the evidence that we were given.
So what convinced you and the 5 others to switch your votes and vote for not guilty of manslaughter?
I think everyone will tell you the same thing. It's just lack of hard evidence. It's just, like I said, the duct tape and the chloroform and things like that. You could, if you took a good hard look at it, you could kind of. There was a lot of doubt surrounding all of those certain things.
So here you go. In the beginning, it was basically split jury, right, over the manslaughter thing, and then talked them out of it. Okay, now she didn't say we talked them out of it, but obviously she switched teams on that, and that's where I'm like, how? What? I mean, that's the part that I'm like, how, even with that one, you didn't get a conviction out of that. It's like they had to 100% know exactly what took place. And for that right there, I'm just like, look, I don't care if the child drowned or if they did something on purpose. This child was found out in the backyard in a bag and a thing. I mean, how do you not get that out of that? I'm just like, my God, it's shocking to me.
The defense in their opening statements said that Casey Anthony's father molested her repeatedly when she was young, and that's the reason why she kept the drowning of her child secret. Do you believe that she could have been molested? Was there evidence that she could have been molested by her father?
There was no evidence, none at all, and that had no bearing on any verdict that was made. I mean, that was irrelevant. It was thrown out there but never substantiated. So
did it bother you that it wasn't substantiated later in the trial? What happened was the judge said, you cannot bring this up in your closing arguments defense because you didn't present any evidence about it.
I really wish he wouldn't have brought it up. It's a disturbing image to have in your mouth. I mean, he painted a very graphic and disgusting picture, and if you're going to do that, at least back it up. And if you can't back it up, don't put that picture in people's minds. Nobody wants to see that.
Okay, major. First of all, here we go. She is saying that didn't have any bearing on what there's no evidence brought out against that. Yeah, but yes, this was brought out in the trial. Okay. I personally think, because Casey has poured over this stuff, a lot of the stuff that Casey is highlighting in her story and in this documentary is stuff that it can't be proven, right? You have to go on her word. This is another thing of they didn't present any evidence. Like, this was just like somebody talking, right? There's no hard evidence. So people like Casey know how to exploit that, right? And again, I'm not some licensed psychologist or anything like that. I just go based on my own experiences with people in my life. They know what to play up and what not to. And so that doesn't mean that they're perfect liars, obviously, but they know how to play this game. And so for her to say that, it's one of the only things that I'm like, well, amen, with the juror right here. But again, it also plays into where I'm like, I don't know what this jury needed. I really don't. Other than to have been there with them and to have seen what happened. 100%. And kind of any crime. I mean, look at all these other things. Look at the staircase, for God's sakes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all these other cases that we look at where these people are convicted on far less. And now here's my thing. I have no problem with someone wanting to dot their I's and cross their T's, because in the same note, we see miscarriages of justice all the time that should never have happened, right? But I feel like this is an instance where they went so overboard with so much glaring evidence, and I'm just like, I mean, really?
And regarding the drowning, I mean, the only evidence that was presented were pictures of Kaylee climbing in the pool. with her grandmother, standing near her screen door, which a door which her grandmother testified she couldn't open. It's pretty flimsy evidence at best, and I'm wondering if you think that there was a possibility that she could have drowned. Was there any evidence that convinced you of that?
There's no evidence that convinced me of that, no.
So again, just absolutely no idea what happened. And truly, at the end of the day, no one knows except for Casey Anthony, right? Because, I mean, unfortunately, the body couldn't really tell us. But there's enough there to where something wrong went down, right? If the child had been found and it was clear that maybe she had wandered off, a clear indication of this would have been a 911 call right away, a missing child thing. But again, this is where I'm just like, yeah, the mother's gone. She comes up with a story. She lies repeatedly. And we'll hear in a second this juror talk about lying. And she's so critical. Well, I don't want to, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's keep watching. I'm sorry.
So you don't think she drowned, you don't think she was molested, so what the casual viewer of this trial might say is, okay, well, how come you didn't find she was guilty of murder?
Because it has nothing to do with what the defense presents. It's on the prosecution to prove what they brought charges. They have to prove with their evidence that those charges are, they can validate bringing those charges and that the crime was committed.
This also is like a person who's like super extra, like they say, I believe she was studying to be a nurse or whatever, but like, you know how you meet people, say they wanted to be a cop, but they never could be, so they like wear all this like cop stuff, you know what I mean? Like, this is the vibe she gives off.
So you didn't believe the central points of what the defense told you, but
No.
you just felt that the prosecution didn't have enough evidence to convict.
Well, they had, like I said, they had good, strong circumstantial evidence, but at the end of the day, it was circumstantial, and there was not just one strong piece of evidence that said something definitively. Every piece of evidence could kind of said this or that, this way, that way. I mean, there were many different ways you could have gone with each piece of evidence.
Now, again, she sits here and says this, oh, they had lots of, good circumstantial evidence. I mean, that's a lot of what goes on there. And especially for some of the lesser charges, that's what just blows my mind. Now, granted, they did hit her with the lying to the cops. That much was obvious. But honestly, at this point, I'm surprised they hit her with that. I'm surprised they didn't just apologize, roll the red carpet out for her, to be quite honest. Yeah, but this like, oh, there's so many different ways you could have gone with this evidence. Well, apparently not, because y'all went in one direction of it doesn't add up to this. It was almost like there was this whole thing over there that was glaringly obvious and glaringly like it walks like a duck, and she even uses this analogy at some point, but they all intentionally chose to ignore that and look at every other possibility.
Here's what juror number 2 told the St. Petersburg Times. I just swear to God, I wish we had more evidence to put her away. I truly do.
Now, this is another juror. This is obviously, it's just a quote, not from the person or whatever. So here's one person saying, I wish we had more evidence.
Well, you have juror number 2 there. Then juror number 3 has been speaking out to ABC and Diane Sawyer, and there are a number of interesting quotes that's coming from her, and we'll show them to you as I read them here. She starts off by saying, I did not say she was innocent. This is Jennifer Ford, by the way. She says, I just said that there was not enough evidence. If you cannot prove what the crime was, you cannot determine what the punishment should be. Okay, here's what's interesting about that particular quote. It is, as any legal person will say, not up to a jury to determine punishment. Their job to determine innocent or guilt. So that could be a question as to, did the jury really understand their role?
Amen. I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier, right? When I got too excited and started talking about it early in the video. Again, you know me, I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I'm talking about, where I'm like, she keeps talking about that first degree and death penalty, and I'm like, I don't think that's you don't need to be deciding that, but that's what they're filtering it through, right? Now, again, I do agree with, yes, you need to know, you need to be able to dot your I's and cross your T's, and so, if you're going up and the prosecution isn't presenting like a bam, here's what happened, but this is a circumstantial case. That's the thing. Unfortunately, just, again, lucky for her, I guess, right? That the body was decomposed to a point where they couldn't tell exactly what happened. But I just would think, personally, I feel like when the child's body is found that close to the home, with items on the child that go back to the home where Casey and family lived, in this manner that they used to bury their animals and all this kind of stuff, I mean, and she doesn't report for 30 days, I mean, how much more do you need to know that something nefarious went on?
And she says, everyone wonders why we didn't speak to the media right away. It was because we were sick to our stomach to get that verdict. We were crying, and not just the women. It was emotional, and we weren't ready.
Well, I'm glad they cleared the air on that one.
Why? Why did you and the other jurors acquit Casey Anthony of murdering her daughter?
There wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't anything strong enough to say exactly. I don't think anyone in America could tell us exactly how she died. If you put even just the 12 jurors in one room with a piece of paper, write down how Kaylee died, nobody knows. We'd all be guessing. We have no idea.
So it's cause of death that was a problem?
How can you punish someone for something if you don't know what they did?
I love the way he talks to her the way we want to talk to her, right? Everyone else is kind of coddling this woman, and it's like, no, like, what?
The prosecution wasn't able to give you a solid enough picture?
I just love that part. I mean, honestly, it's just like, what more did y'all need? Again, they needed to be there. And this is the interview that I was talking about where, I mean, I really feel like I'm sorry, I don't know about the other jurors, whatever, but with her, at least, the way she talks, they were looking for reasons to not convict.
Of how
Do you see that picture? I have no idea what it, like, they didn't even paint a picture for me to consider.
You think that this might have been an accident, that she might have drowned in the pool? You believe the defense on that?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a lot easier to get to that conclusion. I can walk from here to there and make it happen. With the chloroform, I'm all over the place. I have no idea. I'm in a maze. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where the end is. I'm not even quite sure where I began with the chloroform. So I can't get from beginning to end, A to B, to see what even happened. I can't make it work.
She is so big on that damn chloroform. And I mean, I get, obviously, this was huge during the trial. I mean, I shouldn't say that, right? I get that. But it's like so latched onto that. And it's just like, I mean, come on. And might I just say, the little smirk on her face throughout this, like she's reveling in the negative attention that she's getting from it.
When you all went to deliberate this case, were you unanimous from the start? Or
No. Oh, no.
Really?
No, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know, I don't really want to speak for everyone else, but there were a lot of conflicting ideas, and some people were like, you know, I feel like she did, but there's just not enough to substantiate it. Some people were just like, nope, she didn't do it. Like, they have nothing for me to even have any idea what happened. And I did hear someone say, you know, we're from Pinellas County, we didn't have that emotion and that, whatever. That means we have no bias, we're just looking at the facts. And the facts, when you don't have that emotional connection, they don't prove anything. Like, I'm still confused. I have no idea what happened to that child.
I have no idea what happened to that child. She sounds like damn Casey in the documentary. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. I mean, and again, do I know? No, I do not know. And again, am I going on emotion? Yeah, I probably would not have been a good juror for this, or a lot of things. Like, let's just call that what it is, right? I just feel like circumstantially the evidence speaks for itself, and I'm like this. I'm like, I don't care if it's an accident or not. There is, and again, I don't know the legal terms for this, but I'm like, I'll say it one more time. I've said it so many times in this video. The fact that the child was found in this way and Casey Anthony's behavior, take out the party and taking all that, you took weeks to report your child missing and then you lied to the cops to throw them off. Yes, we got her for lying to the cops, but I just look at it like, even if it was an accident, then hit her with manslaughter. She was negligent and allowed her child to go in the pool and drown, and then she tried to cover the crime up. That right there is enough for me.
There have been people who said you only deliberated 10 or 11 hours, and that shows you weren't serious.
Oh.
That you didn't really look at the evidence. It's a 31-day trial or whatever it was, 33-day trial. They say you must not have looked at the evidence.
That's speculation, and you know what? Speculation is not fact.
Now, first of all, no. First of all, remember, that's speculation. Speculation isn't fact. She loves all the legal words that she's learned through this. Keep this in mind in a minute when she starts talking about George, okay? Because she puts way more weight in speculating about him and letting that influence her decision than she seems to do with other things. So let's listen to that in a second. And also keep this in mind, 31 days of trial, 10 or so hours, almost 11 of deliberations. Keep those figures in mind for a moment.
We had a lot of discussions. We started to look through stuff, but none of it, how did she die? If you're going to charge someone with murder, don't you have to know how they killed someone or why they might have killed someone or have something, where, when, why, how?
Okay. We started to look through stuff, but this tells me everything I need to know about that. We started to look through stuff. In fact, let's listen to it one more time.
We had a lot of discussions. We started to look through stuff, but none of it, how did she die? If you're going to charge someone with murder, don't you have to know how they killed someone or why they might have killed someone or have something where, when, why, how?
There you go. They didn't look through all the evidence again. They didn't come through this. I get this vibe that they basically were so hung up because they didn't know exactly to a T what happened in those moments that, yep, you know what, we can't say, so let's not look through this. And I don't feel like they looked through it. I feel like they rushed through it. They probably sat around and talked. I mean, let's be honest. They've been sequestered for 31 days. They're ready to go home. I get it. You know, now, am I trying to sit here and say that the prosecution, you know, could have maybe sold this a little bit better? I'm not trying to just put the weight on all the jury. I think it was a combination of things, right? But that right there, that whole, like, we started to look through things, but, oh my God, that infuriates me.
Those are important questions that were not answered.
That gets to Casey.
Right.
31 days. 31 days that she does not report the death or disappearance of her daughter, and she parties.
Right.
And people say that's evidence that she is a killer.
It looks very bad. The behavior is very bad, but bad behavior is not enough to prove a crime.
What did it tell you about her?
Well, if you consider the whole family, they didn't really live in reality. They wanted everything to be happy and everyone to be fine. Even when in the jail video, she came up smiling. And she looked happy. She's in jail. Do you think that's how she really feels? I'm guessing not.
Now, again, remember the whole comments about speculation. We're starting to get into some of her stuff where I'm like, you have to rely on some speculation. Now, there's a difference between outlandish speculation and normal speculation. Something like this. Well, she's in jail and coming up smiling and da-da-da-da. Again, I'm just like, have you never dealt with someone like this? And maybe they haven't. I don't know. Maybe this person hasn't. But again, the hypocrisy and speculation on this juror's part, it blows my mind.
Did you believe the defense accusation that this was a family that had incest in it, that Casey had been molested by her father or brother?
I have nothing to substantiate that. So, no, I mean, if you don't prove it...
That played no role in your deliberations?
No, if you don't prove it, I'm not going to just, because I hear it, no, that's not a factor.
Again, this would only feed into Casey Anthony's willingness to be like, interesting, I can use that as my story as to why all this happened, because who's to say?
What did you make of George Anthony's testimony?
He did not help the state's case.
Why?
Because he was clearly dishonest.
He was dishonest?
Yes.
How?
Well, he was evasive, number one. His story seemed to change depending on, like they said, initially he was on the defense's side, so he would, fight with Mr. Ashton, not give straight answers. But then he switched to the prosecution side, and then he won't give the defense straight answers. It's all, what do you mean? And can you ask a question again? And I don't, clearly you can follow a logical conversation and respond. Like, he acted like he just couldn't understand what was going on. It was clear to me that he was just being difficult. He didn't want to answer questions, and if it didn't help the prosecution's case, he was going to try and just, I don't recall.
So she'll sit here and speculate on all this about George, and it sounds like this really comes into like, oh, he didn't. Yep, he's dishonest. He's this, he's that. Da-da-da-da-da. What in God's name, then, did she think of Casey's behavior leading the police on? I know Casey didn't testify, which is probably half the reason she's free. But I'm like, you put this weight into George, but his daughter has sat there and taken the cops on this, wild goose chase over her daughter. You're willing to dismiss George to this degree, but, what about, do we apply the same thing to Casey?
Do you believe George Anthony had something to do with what happened to Kaylee?
I don't know if he had anything to do with it, but I think he was there. Him and Casey have something, and the jail videos again, her mom has all the questions, and George sits there and pats his wife's back, and then he's like, do you have anything else you want to tell me? He's not like, what's going on? He's always like a step back, hands are clean, not too close.
She loves doing these interviews, number one. Number two, again, don't we see this? You see where Casey's story is piecing together, right? I swear to God, she went and watched all this stuff and then started piecing the story together. It all makes sense, right? They're feeding her the story. Third, the speculation on her part about the behavior, but yet she doesn't do that. I mean, you see, like, this is where I'm like, wait, pick a lane. Left or right, yes or no? No.
I want to get back to Casey, because she's been the focus of so much attention and interest.
Right. It was her daughter, so.
Casey lies.
Yes,
and
she does.
lies again. And then she goes out and she leads the high life while her daughter is dead.
Right.
People say that is evidence that this person was capable of killing that child.
Even if that's evidence that she is capable, it doesn't show that she did do it.
Again, looking for any reason to let her off the hook.
Do I think she's completely innocent? I mean, I have no idea. I don't have the evidence to say one way or another. I'm not going to accuse her of killing. I have no idea, but we'll just say something happened. At some point, she probably needed medical care, or at least there could be some attempt to save the child's life. That was never made. That bothered me.
And can we not get a charge out of that? Could we not have gone with that manslaughter? I mean, this is where I'm like, you know, I mean, come on.
If it was an accident in the pool or wherever, how did the child end up in a swamp months later, rotting away?
You deny it, you get rid of it. You don't look at it, you don't think about it, it doesn't exist. It's gone.
You
push it out of your
cover up
mind.
a murder. That's what the prosecution said. It was
You're covering up something. It's not proven that's a murder. You're covering up something. It's either an accident or, I mean, nobody knows what it is.
I'm going to press you on this.
Go for it.
Duct tape on a baby in a bag rotting in the woods. Most people look at that, they put two and two together, they say that's a murder.
Well, in our country, unfortunately, we have to prove it. You can't just be like, yeah, that really looks bad. Smells bad, looks bad. I get that. It does. Smells bad, looks bad. I get that. But it's someone else's life, and if I'm wrong and I kill someone else, I can't live with that.
What about Kaylee's life? This is what blows my mind with this. Again, looking for any reason to let Casey walk. Runs all over me. And while I get what she's saying, I just feel like, I mean, did we not vet these jurors? I mean, come on.
When you're in court as a juror, you have certain responsibilities.
Correct.
You're here now. Do you think Casey Anthony might have killed her daughter?
Again, it's a possibility. I don't know one way or another. If gut feeling, like I said, I feel like she had something to do with it. I don't know what, and I don't think it's fair to speculate. That's how I feel.
If you feel
But she's going to sit there and speculate on George. Okay.
that she might have killed her daughter, a lot of people might say, how are you going to sleep at night?
I'm going to sleep just fine because I had, in this country, that's our Constitution. I applied the law. I did the best I could. I tried to make it work. I was reaching. I was trying to, you know, like I said, if they're all three there and no medical attention is given, then that's culpable negligence, failure to provide safety and medical care and things like that. I was trying to go for that, but there's just not enough. It's just stretching and reaching, and there's just not quite enough to get there.
Again, they needed to. This juror needed to be there on the scene. There is no connecting the dots, which they were already connected, right? There's one piece missing from this damn puzzle.
Not guilty doesn't mean innocent.
How do you feel about that, that you may have let a woman who murdered her own daughter walk off that charge?
It doesn't feel good. It was a horrible decision to have to make, but I had to do it based on the law.
I will totally agree with her. Yes, it is a horrible decision to have to make for any kind of a situation, thing like this case, whatever, whether it's Casey Anthony or whatever. It would be very difficult to be in a jury and to have to weigh in on all these things. Totally get it. Not guilty doesn't mean innocent. There's that. But again, she's not really wanting to say anything one way or the other, right? Which, I mean, this being fresh, all that kind of thing. So if she said, yeah, I thought she did it, I mean, imagine the backlash that she would have received, right? I mean, that would not have been good either, so.
Among the people who followed this trial is that they wanted justice for Kaylee. Was there any justice for Kaylee here?
It's the way our system works. You can't. I don't, if there was a way to give Kaylee justice, if that's what happened, you have to prove what happened, and then I'll give Kaylee justice. I can't just do it because I can't. I mean, it's not how it works.
Again, from the very beginning, I feel so bad for Kaylee. I feel like her life was stolen and she's always been an afterthought, all the way to the most recent documentary, just an afterthought to all these people. It's shocking.
Why be mad at me? The prosecution had to prove it. Why is it my fault that they didn't prove their case?
I mean, my God. I do feel like, yes, there's things that the prosecution, I mean, let's be honest, they could have wrapped this up a little better and sold this and da-da-da-da-da. Maybe reframed or repackaged some of the charging, if you will. Nonetheless, the nation was, and I don't even say that, the world, I mean, everybody watched this trial and everyone was beside themselves over the verdict. And then to hear behind the scenes that this is what was going on, I'm like, really? Blows my damn mind. Now, if you didn't watch what I had to say about the documentary, then click the video popping up because you can hear all the tea I got to spill on that.